Okay, perfect. Just want to go over a few things. So let's check out crit. Decided to go crit minions in the end. And I went back to the Javelin Abysslings too. Anyway, to go away from things we did in standard, I went with the Awakening for the armor penetration. I still think the HP one's a little bit better, but hey, wanted to have a different Awakening. Let's go over what we do here. So decided to go with the Illusion Hook while we're channeling Sacred Devotion. And here's the skill tree. Take a quick note of that. And throw a few screenshots up here shortly, and we'll go over how some of the stuff connects to each other. So this is the minimum amount of Troms crystals. We've only used 3 so far. 1, 2, and I think 3, 4. So probably 4 to unlock this next one. We have enough to do one more. Might add another skill, not sure yet. Kind of want to start working on Weaken Totem. If anybody is interested, there's going to be a few different setups for your Javelin Abysslings, a few different setups for what you want to use with Sacred Devotion, and whether or not you want to use wands or if you want to use a staff. That's kind of what it really comes down to. So we're using wands, so I went with more of a Sacred Devotion setup, no Whirlwind. And we attached Cut to Illusion Hook instead of Whirlwind this time. Yeah, the 25% chance is kind of low, and you're not always really getting this damage amplification. But when it does proc, you get the amplification, and it's better than not having it. So that's why we decided to stick with it. For your teleport, there's a bunch of different setups you can use. I just wanted to try out using buff activation upon using movement skill, since usually with Tenacious Regeneration, we have it set up with buff activation when hit. That's going to be the few things that we talk about. So we have the Illusion Hook that shoots out. It's pretty consistent. It just has to hit, and it gives the debuff. It's a very powerful debuff. It works against bosses, and it works against enemies. Nice little thing to add while you're channeling too. Now, once you're tanky enough, and you have a lot of damage dampening and HP, you can run up, teleport in, group a bunch of creatures up with the Illusion Hook, as you see in the clip that we have. As soon as you start taking damage, you just teleport away, and the minions that stay behind, they're able to tank the enemies a lot easier with the dampening, with the attack speed dampening and whatnot that they have. So everything that we're doing all chains into debuffs and everything to help our minions out. And that's what's going on here. Let's go over some of the awakenings. So if you need to, you can take a screenshot of this. You can set your minions up the same way. You can set them up differently. Things I wouldn't do. Minion damage source is not important on your Rune Knight. Rune Knight is a very low source of damage. Other things, until you have the increased duration and the cooldown for gather minions, be very careful. You don't want to just go in and start using gather minions with decreased duration before you're ready for it. If you just pop that on right away, then you won't have the buff up very often. I have a 6.4 duration with a 6.9 cooldown, so this is almost always up. And it goes to 485% with that decreased duration. So as you see, without it, it's a lot lower. 288. And you add that, it's huge. But you have to have time acceleration and increased duration set up correctly before you're able to really run this setup. So in the meantime, just kind of do what you want. You can set it up so that you channel gather minions with Sacred Devotion, or you bring them into yourself with the Trigger Rune and Whirlwind. Both of them have their own benefit. But anyway, let's go on. If you want to take a screenshot of this. I'll show the Zodiac page here shortly as well. But the best thing that we need to go over real quick is just kind of how you gear. A lot of times people have a hard time gearing. So let's go over how you get to your crit rate, get your HP up, get your defenses. So for your charms, if you're going a barrier build or HP build, Just kind of go with whatever you're going with. Hamals for the HP, Alyssa for the barrier. And you're trying to get to 80% and 140 once you get your 7 or 8 star. This is a good example of what like a good charm would look like. This is a good example of what a charm that you're trying to go more tanky with would look like, but with a bad legendary proc. And as you see, kind of going for the damage and the crit damage over everything. Crit damage makes me keep a charm. If we just get damage amplification on it and it kind of benefits us, we go with it as well. Aside from that, double wand setup is what the test was here. That's what the main thing is we're trying to set up. Let's get rid of this Rune Knight. Yeah, Rune Knight is driving me nuts. So, for your helmet, there's a bunch of different setups. I've tried to get the enhanced rune effect and whatnot going. It's been a little bit more difficult than not, so decided to stick with the max Abyssling summon count. Just easier for all content. For your wands, the wand that doesn't use an authority, you can try to get the most stats out of. Try to get all 3 suffixes to do something that's important, along with critical damage and whatnot. The wand with the max Abyssling summon count, that one's going to have 1 dead stat. Usually, you can only get Abyssling damage or attack speed with it. So be careful when crafting, you can't have everything. And then down here, try to get, like, instead of the spell damage, I wish that would have been, like, Venom Rate for Abysslings. We could have re-rolled it into some big damage. Shoulders, try to go for anything that you can re-roll that has minion stats on it. You can get minion HP, you can get HP recovery upon Abyssling death, something that re-rolls into crit rate or crit damage. That's going to be the most damage for you. For your chest, if you can, try to get the +3 skill rune. I got the +2 on the legendary, so we got the +5 chest. Don't try to work for this, just try to get the +3 here, and then whatever your legendary is, you're going to get. One thing that you can add to your chest, though, instead of just all defensive stats, is try to get something like that. HP recovery upon Abyssling death. Helps out a lot. That way you have 1 stat you can re-roll into either crit rate or crit damage, depending on what you need. Gloves, you can always get minion crit rate. I'll even show you over here. This one's we're working on. For the prefixes, we just got the attack speed, but for the suffixes, you can get crit rate, crit damage, and damage amplification with the water. Pretty good. There's a few different enchantments. This is the one I like the most. And with your boots, you can always reroll minion movement speed into crit. Same with the necklace. You can reroll minion HP into crit. That's why I say try to get that on everything that you do. This high crafted cut effect, since we use cut, I stuck with it. And the legendary effect wasn't really that great. As for the belt, if you can get something that you can reroll into an offensive stat, go for it. In this case, we just kind of went for the minion HP. And I was happy that we got the mana recovery since we were needing it. As for rings, your first ring you're going to craft is probably going to be a fire ring, because the minion damage amp is the biggest. But this tier 10 roll only goes to 5%, and it can only roll to tier 10. So once you get to 500 intelligence, depending on the build you're going, you may not be going a build that does this, but once I got to 500 intelligence, I was able to go into the Acuben rings. That's this one right here, Authority Acuben. Throw that on a ring, and you're able to roll the damage amplification at 500 intelligence, and you get the minion sharpness effect. So this means that you can roll crit damage, and sharpness effect, minion damage amp, minion attack speed, and even though we didn't on this ring, it's possible to roll minion damage and the damage amp on this authority. Whereas on the fire, once you roll damage amplification, minion damage is out of the picture. You can't roll that again. This is the reason why the 500 intelligence is required for this. The tier 12 roll will get you to the 5% damage amp, So the investment's a little bit further to try to make one of these kind of rings. But if you're a crit build, the sharpness effect alone is just a little bit stronger. It's just enough that the high craft reroll doesn't matter as much, and that makes it a lot easier to build than worrying about your high crafts. At least in my experience with it so far. Let's go with the last part of the build here. So that's for your rings. That's for everything else. And if you build something like that with a decent amount of investment, I was able to get to 883% crit damage. And if we need to, we can get the crit rate on the sheet to show 100%. But with the Unite, Crowd, and Rage being at 139%, our crit almost goes through the roof, so we don't even need any extra. So that's it for how you're going to gear. I'll throw up the Zodiac. But the last thing is your relics. So for your relics, some people ask for minions what you need to do. It's really simple. Castor and Acumen both have a passive that are great. You get the crit rate, crit damage, get the HP, damage, and the minion skill rune. So these two are very simple. Now for your third one, that one's up in the air, depending on what you're doing. So since we're doing physical Abysslings, I wanted the weakness effect. This Curse of Power is really powerful. And the passive gives you the HP, and I'm an HP build, so this worked out in the end. Something that I was at the first of the season that I think is a little bit stronger, and I might move back to, was going Leo. The Rune Knight HP and transferring the damage to your Rune Knight was a little bit stronger than even having HP from the Boreals, and even having the Curse. So I do like having this. This I was able to get #1 Inspire when I was using this, so definitely works well. Your soul gems are pretty simple. You're just looking for things with minion stats. If you have things that roll minion damage on a buff skill, that works. On when they attack, anything will work for you. All right, and that's it for the build pretty much. Zodiac tree is a little complicated. I like to show that for people, but sometimes the way I'm spec'd is a little bit strange. In this case, cycle, not the best. I'd rather do Unite Power usually, but we went into cycle because we can't activate the Zodiac Stone without it. So I'd refer to any of my other videos. Most of them show a build that's a little bit easier for you. But if you want, I'll just click on each one of these for you real quick. This will allow you to kind of figure out what you want to do. So here's these first ones. We'll click each one of them real quick. You can go ahead and screenshot. In fact, I'm going to show what each one is. Enhanced potion effect, and I'm getting my element resist. Extra stats like block expertise through here. We do stat transfer. Minion acceleration until you have enough attack speed. Things like HP. This is because we're using minion presence. Don't recommend speccing into that unless you are. And the final tree over here, I like to go into minion damage pen or into whichever energy of minion I'm using. All right, that's the most for the update. That's kind of the big stuff for the update. there's not a whole lot. And yeah, this build's been fine. If you're wondering about how it does in descent raids, we do great. As you see there, you can kill the boss is fine. 85 billion damage on Willem. And, I mean, the damage rewards, you only need to do 10 billion, so you're doing way overkill. Void Rift, I haven't even tried Zeno yet. This should be no problem. These two have been just no problem whatsoever. Or the ones before him. Those two I haven't done yet. And that's about it. So hopefully that helped people out. You're able to get most things done, and I was able to accomplish all the season stuff. Got the gear here. And that's it for the summon Abysslings. We were able to get pretty good crit damage. I think going anything over 883%. I took it up to 1,000. The damage wasn't increasing by as much as I wanted to, so I think things like re-rolling my gear into damage amp in particular instead of the crit damage is a few things that I started to do. Don't know if it's the best choice, but we'll see.